China has reopened its borders, a lift from the closures put in place at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. This as the country grapples with a COVID surge in the wake of easing up on severe lockdown policies without an exit strategy. What's more, the Associated Press reports that China is suspending social media accounts of critics of the country's COVID policies. And joining us tonight to discuss this and more is medical ethicist, psychiatrist, and fellow at the National Catholic Bioethics Center, Dr. Erin Kheriaty. Dr. Kheriaty, welcome back. Great to be with you again. So much to talk about, but first, this report from China, it hits a little close to home, especially the news about suppression of dissident voices over social media. Your reaction, and were you surprised by this report?
So I'm not at all surprised by what's happening in China. The authoritarian Chinese Communist Party there has been suppressing dissident opinions for decades. And the fact that they would do this in relation to COVID policy is not at all surprising. I think what would be more shocking to Americans is that our federal government and many of our federal agencies have been doing very similar things to suppress information and to actually censor information for the American public in direct violation to First Amendment free speech rights of Americans. I have a piece out just today in the Wall Street Journal describing how the White House pressured Facebook to censor COVID-related information that it disapproved of.
And talk to us a little bit more about that and also the lawsuit that you're involved in, the case of Missouri versus Biden.
Yeah, so the Missouri v. Biden case was filed by the State Attorney General of Missouri and Louisiana against several senior administration officials, both in the Biden and Trump administration, alleging collusion between these government officials and agencies and big tech, particularly social media companies, to censor COVID-related content and other disfavored content that the government disapproved of. And while arguably, legally, private companies like Facebook or YouTube or Twitter can decide who they want to censor or deplatform, inarguably, no one doubts that the federal government cannot do that. But the documents that we've obtained already in this case, I'm one of the 4 private plaintiffs that joined that case. The documents that we have already show that the federal government was doing this, has been doing this for several years, leaning on the social media companies basically to be the long arm of its censorship regime, which under the Constitution, it cannot do. It can't censor directly, but it also can't suborn private entities to do its bidding. And what we see in the latest round of emails that we got from the White House chief digital officer was basically putting a lot of pressure on Facebook to censor COVID-related information. And shockingly, one of the things we mentioned in the Wall Street Journal piece today that was co-authored by our lawyer in this case and myself, we mentioned that Facebook, which owns WhatsApp, was pressured to censor even private communications between family members and friends on WhatsApp if people were sharing COVID content that the government disapproved of. So reaching into not just what you put out there publicly, let's say on Facebook or on Twitter, but even these private person-to-person communications were being censored during the pandemic, which is just shocking.
Yeah, shocking, scary, unbelievable, really. And I know that you're not the only doctor who is involved in this. Other doctors and colleagues of yours have questioned this COVID narrative, and they were banned from spaces like Twitter. And likewise, right. Some of them lost their ability to practice medicine. Do you think there will ever be a reckoning of sorts? And what do you think needs to be done going forward?
Well, the first step is transparency. Light is the best disinfectant, as they say. So reporting like this can help Americans become aware that the government has been violating our First Amendment free speech rights during the pandemic and probably even before the pandemic. And then we need a political push to do an investigation of this entire government-sponsored censorship regime in order to begin dismantling it piece by piece. And I hope our Missouri v. Biden case will be a key part of that effort. There will probably be many other similar lawsuits, I would have to imagine, as more and more information comes out. So dismantling this censorship regime, I think, will take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And I think it will take some political will. It will take the American people demanding this of their elective representatives. But it's absolutely imperative that we do this for the good of the country. The Supreme Court has made it clear that when First Amendment free speech rights are violated like this, it harms not just the person who's not allowed to speak. You pointed out the harms to many doctors and scientists who are not allowed to speak or who were sidelined or silenced during the pandemic, but it also harms the recipient of that speech. In other words, the Supreme Court has said Americans in general are harmed by these violations, even if they were not specifically or individually censored, because they've only gotten one side of a debate. They have the right to receive information from both sides of contested scientific or medical issues. And when the government impairs our ability to do that by controlling the flow of information on social media, which is where most Americans get their news, then Americans are not able to make informed decisions about their health care, about public policy, and about the things that are being put in place that they have to live with and labor under. This is not how a functional democracy can work moving forward.
Dr. Cariotti, I wish we had more time, but always great to be with you. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us and for your insights. We appreciate it.